Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, and we are very happy to have you join us this week for our program and our meeting. It is always good to have people come in and check out our club, see what's going on. And what you will find, I hope, is that there is content there, stuff you read, stuff you watch that'll give you good information about Rotary, service to others, and all kinds of innovation. The idea is to inspire you to see ways that you can make the world a better place. And every week we try to have somebody come and talk to us about some fascinating thing. And that is something that we take very seriously, that we have these programs where people have something to share that kind of fits in this realm of the focuses of our club, which are innovation, entrepreneurship, and education. And this week, a friend of mine and member of the club is presenting, but rather than introduce him myself, I'm going to pass it over to another good friend, Luis Perez in Florida. And Luis, I will hand this to you. Go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Russian. It is my great pleasure to introduce my colleague and really good friend, Mark Dohn. I've known Mark for I guess 6 years, since 2009. We both came into the Apple Distinguished Educators Program together, and over the years we've designed a number of educational products, a number of iTunes U courses. We've participated in a number of institutes together. So I know this guy quite well. I talk to him pretty much on a weekly basis and always leave the conversation really enriched with some of the big ideas that he discusses. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mark, and I think you're in for a treat with what he has to say tonight.
Wow. All right, thank you guys. Let me get slides up and I'll get started for you here, okay? Everybody good?
It's good.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to start with this and basically tell you a little bit of a story. I came into education 18 years ago. I was a third grade teacher in downtown Los Angeles. Along the way, I changed schools, moved around a little bit, became involved with technology, started in a little thing called the Technology Literacy Grant. And because of that, I really found my passion for teaching and learning using technology. And through that, and a bunch of friends, I was able to meet some really cool people and come up with a message, and I'm going to share that with you today. All right. So the problem that we've been having in education, as far as I see it, or one of the challenges, is that instead of creating new ways of looking at learning and using all these new technology tools that we have, we continue to layer technology on top of traditional teaching methods that came from the 1800s. Yes, here it comes. We're talking that would be old school. Now, what I've been seeing is this. We have this unprecedented ability now with technology to connect, to gather and to share and embrace different ideas. But what happens is that what we're doing is that in the classroom, we're actually seeing a decrease in interactivity. What we're seeing is it's less about being interactive, it's more about control and dissemination of information by the teacher. And if you just take a look at our classrooms, you can actually see how over the years we discourage interaction. So let's just take a look here. You know, start with kindergarten. Look at this. There's spaces to explore and to gather and to share ideas. You move into third grade, and what you'll notice is, look at this. There's already structure, and it's already based around not sharing ideas. It's about being in isolation, being in control, and focusing on the teacher and their piece of technology. There you see that overhead sitting there. By the time you get to middle school, the structure in the room, if you look closely at this room, isn't designed around learning. It's actually designed around maximizing how many kids they can fit in that room. There's desks facing 3 different directions. And again, the technology in the room, it's not being used by the kids. It's used by the teachers, and it's used for them to share the information or disseminate that information to the kids. By high school, it becomes bare bones. Teacher's not even in, he sits in the back of the room. You've got that projector locked up in the ceiling, and it goes from there. We can trace this straight into high ed. And from here, look at, you don't even see the projector because it's back projected. But if you look closely, you'll notice that there's really good speakers set up in the ceiling so the kids can hear that professor lecture on notes. And I really don't think this has a lot to do with learning in our world anymore. In fact, if you take a look, we've even taken it to the level of this is technology. This is a technology PD I walked into, and look at this. We're literally teaching teachers how to use technology in isolation. I literally made them start shoving desks together and pairing up and making 2s, 3s, 4s, and learning how to use this. Because if you watch our students today, this is what you see. This is learning and what it looks like to them. This moment, that moment for me came, and I really had this kind of big question. And I said to myself, how do we change education? How do we really do something to change it? And the real start came when I saw this picture. This was a gem and mineral show, and it really embodies what learning is about. This was absolutely nonlinear, multimodal, inquisitive, and it was student-driven. And it was a rock and mineral show. Kids would pick things up and ask this old guy behind the table, what's this? What's this? Why is it this color? Why are they at the same place? And he continued to answer all of these questions. Meanwhile, the kids ask more questions, and they're comparing, contrasting, developing new questions, and learning. I probably saw more in 10 minutes between this old rockhound and a bunch of 8-year-olds than I saw in some science rooms in a year. And so what I decided was that my classroom was going to be an environment and a place where kids could get together in a non-linear, absolutely multimodal, inquisitive, and problem-solving. Most importantly to me was that these kids, that everything here was student-driven. Now, I want you to understand something. Every picture you guys are seeing is a computer lab, and not once were the kids using the computer. Instead, what we were working on were the skills of thinking and collaborating, designing. The computer came in as a tool that they used later to demonstrate what they had learned. My job in this simply wasn't to teach anymore. My job was to coach. I was someone who mentored, I challenged kids, and I also celebrated failures with them. One of the other big things I did, and this image shows you, is I actually asked students to evaluate me. That is an amazing thing, because once I asked them for feedback, students really felt and knew that they were actually an integral part of their own learning process. It was not being driven at them, that they were a stakeholder and that they could share with me. Now, when teaching becomes mentoring and students realize they are an important part of that learning process, the environment becomes absolutely magical. I happen to be married to a wonderful head of school, and I was working in her office when these 4 second graders showed up because they had an idea to pitch about doing a balance beam presentation at recess. Now, imagine being 7, 8 years old and feeling like you had the right to go in to see the head of school and pitch your idea. It's an amazing place. When we talk about what the technology can do, though, when it comes to inspiring, there's some crazy things out there. And this is an example. This was my classroom one day. These were 6th graders who had just returned from PE, the last period of the day, which means they are completely unfocused. But here's what was happening. That image is video of Ray Zahap as an adventurer from Canada. And Ray was in the process of trekking to the South Pole. And by leveraging the use of the technology, Ray had been reading their questions on his website and was videotaping and uploading his answers. This is just 24 hours after they've typed in their questions to his website. And from the South Pole, he was giving them answers. It was an amazing moment to watch these kids realize just how integrated and how engaged they could be in their learning. Now, part of my other passion in this is equity. And I also feel that there's a large population that does not get the service that they need. And because these kids are learners that work in a different style because of who they are, I find that the technology is also a leveler. This is a juvenile home. It is a juvenile detention center in Marshall, Michigan. And students here have committed a crime. These are outside the doors. You notice the shoes sitting outside. They are in lockdown. And when you see students all wear navy blue sweats, tan slip-on sandals, and that's all they have. These kids have lived difficult lives. In fact, one of the things I learned when I was here with them was that often they would reoffend the minute they were released. They would go out and commit a crime simply so they could get back, because there was no stability at home, and at least in here they knew where they were going to sleep, they knew they were going to be safe, and they knew that they were going to have food. Now, using that technology and inspiring kids, I'm going to drop back to what I had about Ray and about Impossible to Possible. Impossible to Possible takes students to extreme environments and has them explore and share by leveraging and using the technology. This is actually on Baffin Island, and a group of students who were actually trekking across the island and studying global warming as they went. I found that what this did was just absolutely amazing, and I wanted to be a part of it because I saw kids become inspired by their peers, and their peers were able to share with them as they went and did this stuff. And so I became the education coordinator with I2P, and through that I was able to actually join on one of the expeditions. And you can see me as we trekked our way through the Brazilian rainforest in the Amazon. If you notice in the picture on the right-hand side there, those brown things on, those are snake guards that we had to wear all day, every day, because you don't want to be bitten by snakes while you're there. It was an amazing experience for me because these are the classrooms that these students were using. They were an indigenous tribe named the Munduruku, and they had kids from the smaller villages coming here to the largest one, which had a state-sponsored teacher who spoke both the native language and Portuguese. And so they kept building these shelters because the only school they had was tiny and was washed out by the river every time it flooded. We decided we were going to come in, we were going to study biodiversity, and we also fundraised to build a school. And this is what class looked like when we got there. Notice that yep, they all have school uniforms. It's 7 o'clock. They're studying math. Also notice that the school uniforms look strangely like soccer uniforms because, well, hey, it's Brazil. Even these guys played soccer on a full-size field barefoot at least 8 miles from the nearest river. It was amazing. Now, with our fundraising and with some help from local people and contractors, we were able to build them a school that was going to allow them to be out and have class year-round, stay dry, and they could actually do some good learning with separate classrooms. It was a great project. I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish. I've talked to you a little bit with accessibility, and I want to talk to you now a little bit more. Luis and I work on this. One of our good friends, Mark Dohn, talks to us about accessing ability, which is really what accessibility is about. which means instead of using this with kids with defined disabilities, what Luis and I focus on a lot is looking and seeing how we can change the technology to help students to learn, because we all have things. And to us, that's what we call equity. You know, many people talk about equality, but really there's equity, because other people need to have, different people have different needs, and we need to register that and honor it as we go through. As I was telling you, these three people, that's Luis there on the left-hand side, Sadie and Mark, I have learned more about people with disabilities and what they can do when given the opportunity, and especially when you have talented people that will sit down and use the technology with them. I took that and I ran it to my classroom, and I had kids who would invert screen colors because we found out that they actually learned better in a negative view, and they had the opportunity to do that themselves. We would have students with autism who would actually photograph their surroundings and drop them into a slideshow as they became more familiar with it and became their way to communicate things. Students with cerebral palsy, I can't tell you how important this tablet became for this young man. Eric was suddenly able to have a window in which to be able to communicate with the outside world. A lot of people say that students with disabilities have a difficult time focusing. My point is that we just haven't given them the opportunity, and we now have the tools with which to do that. Same thing goes for students who struggle with other things. This is one of my students who was actually recording a rap she had written about math. It was her way of communicating and putting these things out. And that's one of the things we need to look at as we look at the technology, is when somebody says this is what it is used for, most likely you can find 20 different ways that it can be used to help a student to communicate what they understand. And they can do it in a way that is meaningful to them. That's the real power here that we see with this. They often become suddenly photographers as we come out and learn their visual. I've watched students who love to make videos, and they actually, this is one of my students, Ian, he was pre-planning his lesson as what he was going to be doing. Now, all of this led to my doing a lot of small work. And then this January, I decided to take this to the next level, and I began a small company, and I'm called Tiltshift Ed. Those who are photographers know that tilt shift is a form of photography that allows you to overcome limits with depth of field and distance. I look at it, and what I look to, and the philosophy with Tiltshift Ed is we're changing the focus on how we educate. So what we look to do with Tiltshift Ed is really try and take away some of the clutter and some of the silliness that's around us. Pare it down and look to see what we can do to allow our kids simply to explore and to learn, and how we can do that together. I didn't say we're going to change the content, but how we approach the content and how we can then use the technology to do that. So what I told you guys at the beginning of this was I was looking to change education, and what I discovered once I got Tiltshift going was this, is that I can't make change. It's not something that's actually possible. This is what I can do. I can create those environments, allow students to engage, ask questions. I can show them inspiring people that show them that there are no limits in this world to what they can do. And when they have the opportunity and they are willing to fail, I can be there to coach them and to show them that mistakes are a part of learning, and it actually means you're not moving backward, it's moving forward. And so that is me. I think I've done it in actually a little bit less time, Rushton, than you needed. Did I actually pull it off?
All good, for sure. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to have our group assembled, kind of toss their comments and questions Mark's way. Before we start doing that, I want to introduce the group that we have. So,
One back, folks.
Demute your cameras and that kind of thing. And I'll start with who alphabetically is on the left. I don't know if that's the same for you. That's Andrew Tao, a member of our club. Andrew is an upward bound guy and making great things happen for kids. And then Luis Perez, whom you met earlier, a good friend of Mark's and mine, and somebody who we're recruiting heavily to join this club because he's amazing. Mark, who just presented, our president-elect of the club, Mitty Chang, and webmaster, a wonderful dude that he is. Joining us from Tokyo is Nate Gilder, who is another person who's presented with our club, told us about all kinds of cool things that happen with musicians, making things kind of happen for charities and communities in the area around Tokyo and east of Tokyo. Shag Shagrin, our membership chair of our club, and the Paella Czar, as we all know from last week's our social, at the Irish Monkey Cellars, kind of wonderful wine tasting room in the Oakland area. And I am Rushton, your eClub president, and a very happy guy to have the chance to have somebody, bring a wonderful message to us on such a regular basis. So, Mark, fantastic stuff. Let me open it up. Anybody who is ready with a comment or question, wave at me, and let's get you on.
I will start by just kind of highlighting the idea that Mark expressed about the focusing or refocusing. See, I'm a photographer as well, so I'm going to use that TiltShiftEd metaphor of refocusing education away from labels and boxes and into equity as something that cuts across a number of different groups. And so when we talk about accessibility, we also need to think about access for not just people with disabilities, but access for kids of different socioeconomic status, some of the kids that you work with that are, incarcerated, and that are part of that school-to-prison pipeline that some of us know too well, who work with those kids. And so, we need to expand our conversation because I think a lot of people want us to stay focused on different groups rather than seeing it as a systemic need to kind of bring about that conversation around equity and how it affects a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that.
You give that an amen for sure. I think, Mark, during your presentation there were multiple times where I was in the preach on, brother, kind of feel for.
Well, let me just give you guys kind of an experience of one of the things was one of the places I go. The kids are in a 90-day program. They're generally Detroit gang members who then get dropped 90 miles west of town on a 70-acre farm, which is about as foreign as they've ever had in their lives. They come in, they haven't been in school for more than a year, if that, and they're being told no for the first time in years. So they are angry kids. As they start to get into routine, as they start to clean up after not being able to smoke as much dope, and you start to watch these kids be successful in school, and they start to become leaders of their group. And towards the end of those 90 days, those last 5 or 6 days, what I started to notice was I started to watch kids starting to clamp down. They were being quiet. And what I suddenly realized was we've pulled them out of this environment. We've stuck them in this place where we've given them some skills and some supports, and now we're just about to go and drop them right back into the same environment where they're going to have to go back to doing the same things they were doing. There's no follow-up. There's no place for them to go once they finish with this program. And I think that's probably one of the biggest places that we need to look at as far as a country is what can we do for these kids to get them active within their communities once they come out of this. Once they're starting to think straight, they start to feel good about themselves, what can we do to help transition them back into their world, but with a different viewpoint and a different goal? And that was one of the hardest things I look at.
There's no continuity.
No.
There's nothing to graduate to.
Nope.
Right.
Nothing.
What do you think
echoing one of the comments from Luis before, a lot of the magic that happens within accessibility, kind of exploration with technology is that so many kids who aren't kind of way over on the edge in terms of having, committed crimes or anything, but they're still in school and they're not connecting like they might because, we say, well, here are all of these kids. Everybody do it this way, right? And, I love seeing, kind of good things happen for kids who have teachers who will say, let's see how we're going to do this. Here's the assignment and here's the default. But if you want to do it a different way and you can convince me that it'll meet kind of the demands, the academic demands for what we're doing, by all means, because, so many of those kids, they just need something a little different. And when they find it, oh my God, it's so good for them. I mean, like, even in regular classrooms, you get close to vacation time, and you see those kids that know they're going to be away from kind of the structured environments and the regular meals and the, kind of caring, stable adults, and they start to act out because they know what's coming.
Yeah.
And not to mention that there is a lot of research on the overrepresentation of kids from Hispanic and African American backgrounds in special education. And a lot of times it's not that they have a disability, but rather that we haven't found a way to engage them in education. And so it's not always an accurate diagnosis of a disability. It's just that the curriculum, to put it another way, has failed them. And so then we end up having to pick up the pieces later on.
So Andrew, I see you're demuted over there. Andrew works with Upward Bound, and I'm guessing you see kind of certain things with the students who come to your programs that may align in some fashion.
Yeah, I work in Oakland, so we have about over 100 Oakland high school students in our program. And yeah, I totally agree with Luis and what he's saying about students with disabilities and special education, especially when it comes to males. I've noticed that, like, dramatically, it's often the males that are diagnosed, and then it creates like it's not called this, but they create essentially a tracking system that tracks a lot of these males of color into this particular, basically like an academic path that really doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't take much for expectations about where kids are based on the way they look, based on their background, based on something they say that first day in class, for a lot of teachers to decide, well, this is who this kid is. And it's not that the teachers are trying, to clamp down on a kid's possibilities. A lot of this just happens naturally. They just don't know to, roll with a few punches. Show that kid that, you believe that kid has a future, and that kid will back you up all year, if you make that happen.
Yeah. What I really loved was, Mark, that at the end of your presentation, I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, like, not being the change, but at least providing the environment.
Yeah.
For that change, that really, like, hit home for me.
Yeah, it's for me. You can create an environment, and that's what I was able to do when I was in the classroom. And what I've been working with other teachers to do is, it's like, look, you are still going to have these standards. You are still going to have this content. All I'm asking you to do is look at how you present it to these kids. You've got all the technology and these tools to use. It's just a matter of giving them the freedom and the flexibility to, first of all, make mistakes and explore to find out how they learn, what they've learned, and then reflect on how they've done it. It's simply that. Give them the space in which to do that. I literally called my computer lab a lab where kids came in and experimented, recorded the results, and then reflected upon it, which was learning. That's what learning truly is. So it's just about seeing if you can create that atmosphere in your classroom. And once you do, I had days when I was bored to death. I had nothing to do. I just stood there and watched them all working. Imagine that. You guys who teach, imagine that. You're standing in the back of the room, it's dead silent. 5 minutes left in class, you've got nothing to do. You're now the bored one in the classroom, which is actually kind of a fun thing to have. I've done it a couple of times just to record it. It's like, look at this. I'm bored.
Throw out a question. What is it you want to know? What do you have a question about? I threw up something in the chat room. It's don't tell them what to know. Teach them how to learn. Be curious. I've always struggled with the term disability or handicapped because it almost seems to hold people back. And I have a cousin who had a cord around his neck when he was born, so there was a little bit of brain damage, and he hasn't gone beyond maybe 5th grade, 8-year-old level, or 10, 12-year-old level. And so I've been struggling with how you can define something like that, and it's hard. Maybe the alternatively experienced or differently experienced, and I think it would be less stigmatic, perhaps, particularly for those who are normal, when in fact nobody's normal. Nobody is normal. And we all have an alternative experience. Some are more extreme than others. So I'm just throwing that out there as a way to perhaps rephrase it.
I like to use the term typical instead of normal. I think it more accurately captures, something out of the ordinary. But I don't like the term normal either, because I think it does carry a certain stigma. If you don't fall within a certain range or a certain definition. And that brings up the issue of language. Language is important, and I think, as Rushton said, the language we use communicates a lot to kids, and that can even be our body language, the way that we present ourselves. Are we open? Are we friendly? Or are we sort of challenging and kind of off-putting? And that can communicate a whole host of things, expectations, and so on, and that can affect their behavior as well. So I think just kind of paying attention to our language and its various forms can be important.
That's a preach on, brother moment there for certain. Good stuff. So while we could go on and on with this stuff, because
Great topic.
Oh my God, it's wonderful, and it touches all of us, Louise, the idea of using the word typical instead of normal, I mean, kind of raises that second question as well, right? Okay, what makes you special, right? What is it that you can do, that you want to do, that you are interested in, that allows you to kind of come to the table and say, hey guys, what about this? And and if we're trying to get kids to just say, do what you're told to do, I mean, they're not going to be in that space of finding out this is what I can bring to the world. This is how I can make a difference in my community. This is the role of service, right? For people to understand that they have something to give, and I think that it's exciting that we get a chance to share those ideas, especially across kind of multiple states and countries. And so what we're going to do is Shags is going to jump in with a comment on here. I'm going to
one more thing. This is in tribute to my mother.
Shags, hold it there. Whoa, it's text. Now, and then what I'll do is finish off the recording, and then we'll give Mark the last word for anything he wants to say. So Shags, it's yours.
Yes, and this is in tribute to my mother, who was a dear, lovely mother and wife of Rotarian for so many years. Passed away in 2008. Her name was Norma. And as the eulogy was going on, talking about her extraordinary life, my niece whispered to my sister, her mom, Grandma was one L short of normal, wasn't she? And that struck me so funny. So when you bring the word typical, and it's so true, my mother was one L short of normal, and of course the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. But that was absolutely fabulous, and this was such a great exchange. So thank you so much. And
awesome.
Thank you, Rick. I just had to share that.
No, a good man. All right, everybody, members and guests of the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, we want you back every week because we have these wonderful people in the club, coming from outside the club and sharing their ideas because we think that these are the kinds of things that will inspire you. And we ask you to do two things. Following the finish of this video, below there will be some links that you can follow to learn more about Mark's work. Take a look at those. And then under that, you'll see a survey that says, I attended. We want you to fill that out. If you are a Rotarian doing a makeup, you need to fill that out so that you'll get the email that you can pass along to your club secretary so that they'll go, oh, yes, you did attend another Rotary meeting. So that's how we make that happen. And then finally, at the bottom, in the Discuss DISQUS system we've got, this is our chance for everybody who's here to toss in their ideas. What stands out for you as a part of this program, as some other part of the meeting? What can you tell us about how you're seeing the world as a function of being part of an online community that is celebrating what service can be in a technology-infused planet, right? So make sure to add a comment, and feel free to respond to other people's comments. You can either do that by quickly creating your own little Discuss account or signing in with Facebook or whatever you'd like, but we certainly want you to leave a comment. And with that, I would like to leave the last word to our speaker and sole member in Michigan, Mark Dohn. Mark, give us your word.
Well, just thank you. I'm so glad I get this platform to share with you guys my passion for this, for our kids and for the future and what we can do with these tools, especially when we're sitting here with an e-Rotary Club, displaying just what, and we're just showing a little bit of the potential of what can happen out there. Imagine if we took this and just everybody pushed it just a little bit farther, and everybody else started to ask the question of themselves, why not?
Amen. Why not indeed? Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us this week with the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. You can find us every week. Our programs start at 12:01 a.m. Monday morning and go all the way to midnight on Sunday. So you can log in at any time and see what we've got going on. We hope you'll join us every week, SiliconValleyRotary.com, and we look forward to having you come back very soon. And Truffle feels the same way, hence barking. So with that, I will finish off our broadcast. All of you who are participating, well, I'll see you again in seconds. But those of you who have been watching the recording, thanks for sticking around with us, and make sure to do that survey and the comment. Thank you.